Welcome again. My name is Brijesh, and today we will be looking at the chapter number 3 of History of Class 7. Earlier we have covered chapter 1 and 2 and the whole series of Class 6 History. Before starting the chapter number 3, I would urge you to like and subscribe the channel if you have not subscribed yet. And if you have subscribed, then enable the notification to get the notification of the videos at the earliest. So let us understand about this chapter, the Delhi Sultans. So it is talking about Delhi Sultans. So how the development of Delhi Sultanate will be happening and what characteristics led to the development of Delhi Sultanate. So in the previous chapters, we have seen that how the development of the Harshas Empire and the decline of the Harshas Empire, and then the tripartite struggle of the Pala Pratyaharas and Rashtrakutas gave the ways to the new kingdoms, because by the 10th century and 10th or 11th centuries, most of these kingdoms got declined. And since the polity was fragmented, there was no strong polity in the northern part. Hence, the northwestern part of India became very weak and very fragile for the attacks of the outer part of the northwestern frontiers. The developments were also taking place in the Western Asia and the Middle Asia, right? So, what type of developments happening? Like there was an empire named Abbasid Empire. So, Abbasids basically ruled by an caliphate. So, who was the Khalifa? Khalifa was the political as well as the religious leader, right? So it gave the like there was the developments were happening in that era and it was consolidating by that time. But also simultaneously there rose a power which was very near to the northwestern frontier of India, and after the Abbasid, Samanid dynasty got developed, right? And when Samanids came into the power, and right after the decline of Samanids, so this is what I'm telling you about the Western Asia and how these empire paved the path for the incursion or for the invasion of India, right? Because after the decline of the Samanids, there was a person rise from the Ghazni named Mahmud of Ghazni. So that person will come to the India for somewhere around 17 times. It will raid the Indian territories for 17 times. So it was purely for the political purpose, and the people were all those army people. They were the mercenaries. Means they used to work for the army by having the payments, right? So any army could hire them. These armies can be hired by the different kings or kingdoms. So this was the meaning of these mercenaries. So what Ghaznavi did, that he used to hire those people and they were motivated by the plunders of the India, right? So almost he used the India as the ATM, and the riches of the Gujrats and the Somnath temples were raided, right? So we will understand that as well. So let us start that how these people came into the fragile northwestern part of the India and how they gave to the rise of the Delhi Sultanate, right? So Delhi became an important city only in the 12th century. Delhi first became the capital of a kingdom under the Tomar Rajputs, who were defeated in the middle of the 12th century by Chauhans, also referred as Chahamanas of Ajmer. So earlier we have already seen that Chauhans were also called as the Chahamans, and how the Tomar dynasty gave the path to the Chauhans, and how the Chauhans in the later phase will give the path to the Turkish dynasties or the Delhi Sultanate, the people who will be coming. So in the last chapter we have already seen that how Prithviraj Chauhan initially in 1191 defeated Muhammad Gauri, but in 1192 he defeated Prithviraj Chauhan. So we will understand these developments, that how these happened and what was the consequences of these battles in the future development of the Indian subcontinent, right? So now we are understanding about the Delhi and how the different dynasties made the difference in the polity of the Delhi, and how it became an important part of the not only Delhi Sultanate but also in the later, how Mughals and the other principalities which got developed, they always wanted to have the part of the Delhi. So let us understand. The coins minted here are, at that time they were called as the Dehliwals, and had a wide circulation in the time of when the Tomars and the Chahmanas were ruling. So these coins used to called as Dehliwal. So I have already underlined it, and they were in the wide circulation. Right, since the trade and the other things were happening, so definitely it was in the circulation. The foundation of Delhi Sultanate in the beginning of the 13th century. So it is telling us that how the foundation of the Delhi Sultanate happened. So I have already narrated the story that how the northwestern part of India became fragile because there was no consolidated power remained by the 13th century, and so it led to the development of the people who came in the from northwestern sector. They started to reside here, and they started to develop their kingdom. So we will understand that as well, that how these developments were taking place, right? So it is now providing us the all those rulers list, those ruled the Delhi. So have a look. So Rajput dynasty, who all from the Rajput dynasty ruled. Tomars, early 12th century from 1165. So initially Anangpal was ruling from 1130 to 1145. Then Chauhans ruled it from 1165 to 1192. As we know that 1192, when the Battle of Tarain happened and Prithviraj got defeated, then this rule also got done by that time. So it is now telling about the rule of the Prithviraj Chauhan, that by what time he ruled in that part. So 1175 to 1192 he ruled from Delhi. So early Turkish rulers, who were the early Turkish rulers? So this dynasty, like the Delhi Sultanate, properly established by the Qutbuddin Aibak, he consolidated it, and hence this the initial ruler have been given as the name is, because we understand that Qutbuddin Aibak was a slave for the of Muhammad Ghori. However, the credit goes to Qutbuddin Aibak to establish the dynasty in the India. Hence, the early dynasty name comes from him. So Qutbuddin Aibak ruled from 1206 to 1210. Then Iltutmish from 1210 to 1236. Then Iltutmish daughter Rajia Sultan ruled from 1236 to 1240, and Ghiyasuddin Balban from 1266 to 1287. So if you will notice, then there is a gap of between Rajia II and Balban, somewhere of 26 years. So in this era, there was no prominent person to rule. There was a ruler, but he was more or less the puppet of Ghiyasuddin Balban. Hence, these people who were not important has not been added here, right? Who did not make any contribution in the development in the history, hence they have not been included here, and that's also not important for our examinations. So in the later part, after 1287, the Khalji dynasties established, and they ruled for 30 years from 1290 to 1320. Jalaluddin Khalji and Alauddin Khalji. Jalaluddin ruled from 1290 to 1296, and these are the broad period have been given, like Alauddin Khilji ruled from 1296 to 1360. Then Tughlaq dynasty, they ruled from 1320 to 1440. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq was there, Muhammad bin Tughlaq was there, then Firoz Shah Tughlaq was there. So we will understand that what type of development happened in all these dynasties, and the people of the important who were the important in this particular time. So Sayyid dynasty is also there in 1414 to 1451 they ruled. And the Lodhi dynasty. Lodhi dynasty is the last dynasty. They ruled from 1451 to 1526. So what happens after 1526? 1526 Mughals came to the India and they established their rule. So here it ends the Delhi Sultanate. but our initial focus will be on Delhi Sultanate, because this particular chapter is talking about the Delhi Sultanate and the parallel development in the Indian subcontinent which were happening. We will look at them, right? So it is talking about that how we were able to, like other the historians were able to know about the Delhi Sultanate. So there were the prominent historians in the court of these sultans, right? So these historians used to, like, they used to write the histories, and these histories used to called as tariq whenever they are writing single. Then for the singular they use it tariq, and tawarik when they are writing for the plurals, like the multiple histories, right? And it was written in Persian, of course, since they were coming from the Persia. So the language of the Turks were the Persian as well. So language of the administration under the Delhi Sultanate was the Persian, right? So remember this. Language of administration under Delhi Sultanate was Persian, right? So it has providing some fact about that in this particular figure. In this particular figure, but it is providing the development of how the process of making or writing the manuscript, right? So the learned man must have written the history on these manuscripts, and it is showing the development, but it is of no use for us, so we will move ahead. Okay, the circle of justice, that how was the justice or in and law and order was in this period. So a person, Fakhre Mudabbir, has written a note about it, that what is in his eyes the circle of justice. A king cannot survive without soldiers, and soldier cannot live without salaries. Salaries come out from the revenue collected from the peasant. So we have understood this as well in the previous chapter, that how revenue used to provide the support for the expansion of the armies. So it is finally will provide that they all people finally used to depend on the justice. If there was no justice, no governance, then this circle was incomplete. So, but the peasant can pay the revenue only when they are prosperous and happy, and this happens when the king promotes the justice and honest governance. So it is talking about the governance, that how the justice and the governance play the important role in not only in the prosperity and happiness, but in the overall development of any kingdom, right? So this has been provided in this particular paragraph. In this particular paragraph, it is providing the basic characteristic and the thinking process or the thought process of the Delhi Sultanate, that what kind of thinking they were having when there was a lady came in the rule, and her name was Rajia Sultan. So let us understand that initial paragraph, and then what Minhaj-e-Siraj says about this particular thing for the when Rajia Sultan came on the seat of the throne, or the when she acquired the throne. So let us understand. Keep the following addition detail in the mind, like the author of the Tawarik lived in the cities, because the Delhi was the prominent capital, and the most of the people, historians, they used to live near to the king, because or the sultan, because they wanted to write and they wanted to please the person more and more, so that they can get good amount of like gold and the other things as per the reward, whatever in the prevalence at that time. So they often wrote their histories for sultans in the hope of rich rewards, just we talked. And these authors advise the ruler on the need of the preserve an ideal social order based on birthright. So it is giving the importance. These people who used to live near to the king or the sultan, they used to advise them about the birthright and the gender distinction. So it has elaborately provided us with that what was the meaning of the birthright, right here, the birthright and the gender distinction. So let us read that the privileges of the claimed on the account of the birth, right? So this was of this type of characteristics were already prevailing in the Indian subcontinent, right? For an example, people believed that the nobles inherited their rights to govern because they were born in the certain families. So if we talk about this, then the same thing applies to the Brahmins as well. Like the Brahmins were the dominant in terms of education, and they were getting the higher level of education, and they were given the vast lands right? So this type of understanding or this type of characteristics were not only prevailing in the Indian subcontinent, but when the people moved out from the northwestern sector and they reside in here, they also got, or probably these type of things were already existing in their rule or their kingdom as well, right? Hence this continued. Now the gender distinctions, that what type of gender distinction it is referring about: the social and the biological differences between women and men. Usually these differences are used to argue that men are superior to the women. So of course we understand, since we have already seen that from the early Vedic period, that the society, what type of social developments were happening, and the social strata which developed, in which the women got the lowest pedestal, and they were not given the importance. Since if we see, if we take the example of the Kalidasa as well, when he was writing in the court of the Chandragupta and the Guptas, then he clearly made the distinction that his higher characteristics, such as king and the Brahmanas, were speaking Sanskrit, whereas the other people, like including women, so we can understand that women given the lower pedestal, how the person of the Shudra Varna and the women were speaking in the common parlance of Pali or Prakritic. So this was the clear distinction. So we can understand that this was happened in the from that time as well. So this was continued in the Sultanate time as well, right? So understand these basic terminology of birthright and gender distinctions. In 1236, Sultan Iltutmish's daughter Razia became Sultan. The chronicler of that age, Minhaj-e-Siraj, recognized that she was more able and qualified. Though Minhaj-e-Siraj is appreciating that she was more qualified than all her brothers, but she was not comfortable. This particular person, Minhaj-e-Siraj, was not comfortable at having a queen as a ruler. So understand the mindset of the person who has been given the task of writing the history, and he must have been the educated and literated one, but still he was not comfortable enough to accept a lady as a queen, right? So this was the mindset got developed by that time, right? Nor were the nobles were happy at her attempts to rule the independently. So we will understand that how the attempts were made to eliminate the Rajia, and later part she was also got killed when she was returning after when she was in the northwestern sector, or she was moving from the Punjab sector, so she was got killed somewhere near to the Delhi in the jungles, right? So let us understand other things. What Minhaj-e-Shiraz thought about the Rajya. So see, he provides all these things. That Minhaj-e-Shiraz thought that the queen's rule went against the ideal. So other things were also being as a thought process have been described, what he was thinking about the rule of Rajya. So Minhaj-e-Siraj thought that the queen's rule went against the ideal social order created by God. So these godly things have been included in the minds, in which women were supposed to be subordinated to men. He therefore asked, in the rest of God's creation, since her account did not fall under the column of men, how did she gain from all of her excellent qualities? So this was his question. So he was questioning the all the position of the Rajia Sultan, but in the name of God. On her inscriptions and the coins, Rajia mentioned that she was the daughter of Sultan Iltutmish. So now this particular paragraph is important, and pay the utmost attention, because it will refer to the two or three women who ruled in the Indian subcontinent, right? So one of them was the Rajia, and the another one was the Queen Rudramadevi. Though did the Rajia herself ruled, and she did not disguise as a man. Rather than she accepted that she is a woman and she is capable enough to handle the kingdom, right? But what opposing to that, to the contrast of that, what Rudrama Devi did, that she ruled from 1262 to 1289, and she used to belong from the Kakatiya dynasty of Warangal, so which is a part of modern Andhra. So Rudrama Devi changed her name on her inscription and pretended she was a man. So understand that what type of mindset got developed. If a lady will rule, then the people would not accept. Hence, this thing, Rudrama Devi kept this thing in her mind, and she disguised as a man, right? And the inscriptions were also inscribed as the man, rather than proclaiming that herself that she is a woman, and these inscriptions have been uh, inscribed by a women queen. So this was not done, right? So another queen, Didda, ruled in Kashmir somewhere around 982 1003. Her title is interesting, is come from Didi, or the elder sister, an obvious affectionate term given to the loved ruler by her subject. So we have talked about the three rulers as of now: Didda, who ruled Kashmir; Rudrama Devi from the Kakatiya dynasty, right? So, and the Rajia Sultan. So these three we have talked that why they have the important place in the history of India, right? So let us move ahead and let us understand the other aspects and the other characteristics of Delhi Sultanate from garrison to the empire. So let us understand the extension of that as well. So it is providing in the left hand side, if you will pay attention, then it has provided the basic definition of the hinterland and the garrison. So you can read that what is hinterland. So let us understand about the hinterland: the land adjacent to the city or a port that supplied it with goods and services is called as hinterland, right? Whereas the garrison, a fortified settlement with the soldiers, is known as garrison. So now let us understand these two paragraphs. In the early 13th century, here in the early 13th century, the control of Delhi Sultan rarely went beyond the heavily fortified towns occupied by the garrison. So we will understand that why this type of characteristic has been shown, because there was a continuous threat from the Mongols, right? Hence they were terrified in case if they move from Delhi to any other part for the annexation of the other parts, or so the Mongol dynasty can attack them anytime. So this threat was continuously persisting, hence they did not leave it. The Sultan seldom controlled the hinterland of the cities and were therefore dependent upon the trade and tribute or the plunder or supply. So these were the things, right? And the Delhi authority was also challenged by Mongols. So now it is providing us the reason as well. So let us understand that. So Delhi authority was also challenged by Mongol invasion from Afghanistan and by governor who rebelled by at any sign of the Sultan's weakness. So we have seen that not only this particular time, but from the early 6th or 7th century, this was the basic characteristic. Whenever there was a weak king or weak ruler, the people who were the landlords or the governors of the different parts, they rose in the prominence and or the rebellion, and they settled their own dynasties, right? So this was also happening in this time as well. So consolidation occurred during the reign of Ghiyasuddin Balban. So Ghiyasuddin Balban was the very powerful ruler of the Delhi Sultanate, and we will know about him more, that what type of rule he did in the Indian continent in his particular time period, right? And the further expansion under the Alauddin Khalji and the Muhammad Tughlaq. And the forests were also cleared in the Ganga Yamuna Doab, and the hunter gatherers and the pastoralists expelled from their habitats. So why these type of things were happening? So there were 2 or 3 things. Like the internal frontier of the Sultanate aimed at consolidating the hinterland, but at that time what was happening, that the people who were living in these areas, sometimes they were the robbers or the dacoits. So they time and time again they used to plunder the areas or the supplies of the Sultanate. So hence, to expel them, to subdue them, this particular type of campaign they had to do. They cleared the forest Okay, so all these people who were living in the dense forest, they had to explain, they had to leave that area, otherwise they would have been killed. And several the people who were the dacoits and the plunderers, they were also executed, right? So these lands were given to the peasants, because we understand that the prosperity can only come when there is good agriculture. And since agriculture provide as a part of the taxes, so it ensures the prosperity of any kingdom. So understand this trait as well, right? And remember that why they were giving so much of importance to the agriculture. We will see that the Tughlaq will also pay utmost attention, and then Khalji will also pay the utmost attention, and he will take the entire land into direct control, rather than the people who were earlier being the lords of these lands. They will, rather than providing or being the landlord, they will work as a revenue collector rather than being the owner of this particular land, because Alauddin Khalji taken the control of the entire land, right? So understand what type of revenue he must have collected by that time. So these things becomes important to understand these small traits. So military expedition into the southern India started during the reign of Alauddin Khilji, because he was a quite bold, we can say that bold ruler of the Sultanate, and he did not hesitate before taking any step, and he also tried to expand his area to the southern part of the Indian subcontinent. So culminated with the Muhammad, because Muhammad Tughlaq also did same kind of thing when he came into the rule. So he also followed the same type of thing which Alauddin Khilji had done. The Sultanate collected taxes from the peasantry and dispensed justice in its realm. So we just understood all these things, that how the peasantry became important and how justice plays a role. We just looked at the circle of justice. So these things become important, right? And there are several things you must be thinking, that why I'm leaving all these big paragraphs, because these are of no importance to us. Whatever important traits and the characteristics of the Delhi Sultanate which are important for to consume or to read, I am just focusing on that as only, because other things are just a story which will serve no purpose to us, right? For the examination purpose, to read the content is important, so that you can revise it multiple times, right? And revision is the key. Not reading the stories multiple times will not help you. So in this particular map, this map, what it is doing, it is showing the Alauddin Khilji's campaign into the southern India. So after his rule, what all parts he has taken, he launched his campaign, such as in 1299 went to Gujarat, then 1303 Chittor. So these are the different parts. If you will look, then till Tanjavur, from Hoysalas to Tanjavur, then Dwar Samudram, Yadavas, Devagiri, right? Which is later name was changed of Devagiri to Daultabad, then Warangal. So these all are the important territories, and these were the important kingdoms which subdued by him, right? And got the control of this area. So in the era of Alauddin Khilji, Delhi Sultanate was on its zenith. So let us understand. So remember this particular pay 2 to 3 minutes and understand all these important territories on which he attacked, right? Then this particular map here. So there are 2 to 3 very important art and architecture related constructions have been done. So at the left hand side, it has given the detail of those art and architecture. So let us understand and let us read. Quwwat al-Islam Mosque and Minaret, built during the last decade of the 12th century. This was the congregation mosque of the first city built by the Delhi Sultanate. So Quwwat al-Islam, remember this mosque, Quwwat al-Islam. Then in the blue, it described the chronicles as the Dahliya-Kunha, the old city. The mosque was enlarged by the Iltutmish and Alauddin Khilji. So Alauddin tried to build this particular mosque, and while the Aibak constructed the Qutub Minar, and the completion of this particular minaret was done by Alauddin Khalji, Iltutmish. Remember this, initiated by Qutbuddin Aibak and completed by Iltutmish. Remember this. The minar was built by two sultans, as we discussed, Qutbuddin Aibak and the Iltutmish. So we will understand about these art and architectures in the when we will cover the art and architecture portion, right? So it is just providing us some detail about the what is masjid. So we understand masjid and what type of the prayers were there happening, and the imams were there, and they used to read the sermons, which is known as the khutbah. And during the prayer, Muslims stand facing Mecca. In India, this is to west, and this is called as Qibla. So remember this. What is Qibla? Whenever if you see the term Qibla. So Begumpuri Mosque, built in the reign of Muhammad Tughlaq, was the main mosque of the Jahanpana. Remember this particular fact, okay? That Begumpuri Mosque was built in the reign of Muhammad Tughlaq. Right? It was the main mosque of Jahanpana. Then these things are not important, so we are not paying any importance to them, and we are just focusing whatever important for our examinations. So now it is talking about the administration. Rather than appointing the aristocrats and the landed chieftains as the governor, the early Delhi Sultans, especially Iltutmish, they favored their special slaves purchased for military services called bandagans in Persian. So I have already underlined that what in the, if any question comes that in the medieval era, what was the term bandagan refers to? It refers to the slaves, right, purchased for military services, and the bandagan is the name in the Persian language, right? So we will understand about the Khalji. The Khalji and Tughlaqs continued to use the bandagan and also raised people of humble birth who were often their clients to high political positions. But we cannot say about this particular trait about Khalji, though he had the slaves, right? But the other part of the people of humble origin did not get to the prominence in his era. However, Tughlaq was very different, and Muhammad Tughlaq was quite different in this aspect, and the people of humble origin would definitely move to the upper ladder or upper hierarchy in this time, and they got some good positions. So we will understand that as well when we will move to the subsequent chapters, right? That what type of practicals were done by the Muhammad Tughlaq, and how the people of the different caste reached to the prominence or different position, right? The slaves and the clients were loyal to their masters and patrons, but not their heirs. So because we understand that whenever any king or sultan were there, and whenever they became weak, so the people who were there, either they were nobles or the slaves, they always try to rebel or try to get the throne. So these were the things. So these traits we have already seen that these developed from the from 4th to 5th centuries as well. We have already seen in the ancient India as well that these traits were there, these characteristics had already developed, right? So these type of things were happening continuously, and these will go nowhere, because in the when we will move on the Mughal era, then also we will see these type of things, right? Often saw the conflicts between the old and the new nobility, which we were just talking. The patronage of these humble people to the Delhi Sultanate also shocked many elites, and these authors of Persian Tawarikhs criticized the Delhi Sultans for appointing the low and base-born to high offices. So whenever they appointing to these people of low birth or the base-born, so the people who were writing the histories, they always criticize these Delhi Sultanate or these sultans who were ruling the Delhi. So earlier we have seen that how they also criticize the Rajya Sultan, right? So these type of things were happening. So officials of the Sultan Mahmud Tughlaq, what they say that the Sultan Mahmud Tughlaq, so we were just talking that how the people got into the prominence. So Tughlaq appointed Aziz Kumar, a wine distiller, Firuz Hazam, a barber, Manka Tabak, a cook, two gardeners, Lada and Pira, to the high administrative post. Ziauddin Barni, a mid-14th century chronicler, reported their appointment as the sign of Sultan's loss of political judgment and his incapacity to rule. Though we will see that the Mahmud Tughlaq ruled for a very long time, right? And the chroniclers or the historians who were writing these accounts, they were very disappointed with the selection of their sultans, that how he was selecting to these people. So they were not happy at all about these things. The Khalji and Tughlaq monarchs appoint military commanders as governor of territory of varying size. These lands were called Ikta and their holder called Iktadars or Mukti. So pay utmost attention, because the Sultan divided the land into Ikta, and the holders of these Iktas called as the Iktadars or Mukti. So we will understand that why these Iktas were distributed. Though it is to be said that Iltutmish consolidated or brought these type of thing in the administration, right? But this was an old habit or of the Turkish dynasty when they were ruling in the West Asia, right? So it was not that they invented something after coming to the India. Before that, it was also existing. So let us understand that why they use these Ikta and the Iktadars. So Muktis was to lead the military campaigns and maintain the law and order in the Iktas. In exchange of their military services, Muktis collected the revenue of their assignments as salary. So what was the work of these Muktis? So Muktis used to collect the revenue as the assignment of salary, because they used to have they used to provide the military services, though they must be maintaining some military with them. Though army must be there, they used to pay the salary to these military people. Of course, so they must have collected the taxes from these iktas, the land which have been given to them, right? And they not only, apart from doing all these work, they were also taking care of or maintaining the law and orders, right? So these were the important thing. Keep this in mind. They also paid the soldiers from these revenue. They were assigned iktas for a short period of time before being shifted. So important thing is that in this particular period, the iktas, though they were given to the people of muktis, right, but they were not became hereditary, because these people could be transferred anywhere, and whenever the new muktis have been appointed, they have to work like a salaried person. And because this was done to make sure that these people do not get that power and the influence of those people and the money, and they after having all this money and the power, or having maintaining these much of military person, they might revolt. Okay, so to avoid all these conflicts, this type of administration was introduced. Remember this. Okay, so accountants were appointed by the state to check the amount of the revenue collected by the muktis. So as we have seen earlier as well, that there were the accountants were appointed to keep a check on the muktis, whether they are collecting the amount which have been asked to them, or whether they are exploiting. So these sultans were keeping everything in the check. Okay, so they were not leaving anything unchecked. So this was very important and a very good thing of this particular rule. Under Alauddin Khalji, the state brought the assessment and collection of the land revenue under its own control. So the practice which we were talking, that how Alauddin Khalji took control of all these lands, right? So he not only assessed the lands, but also brought all these land into own control. The right of the local chieftain to levy the tax were cancelled, and they were forced to pay taxes. So earlier in the prior to the Delhi Sultans, they were having the big lands, and they had the right to not only levy taxes, they were enjoying, and they, whenever the ruler was weak, they used to attack the ruler itself to throw away from his kingdom, right? So he was quite smart in this way, that he not only controlled all these lands in his control, Rather than they were forced to pay taxes as well, all those people who were the earlier landlords, right? So the sultan's administration measured the land and kept careful accounts. So there were three type of taxes on the cultivation called kharaj. Remember these taxes because these taxes may be asked as a question in the pre. So there was a tax on cultivation. It was known as the kharaj, and it was 50% of the peasant. So understand the exploit. Now understand the exploitative characteristic of the sultanate, that the especially Alauddin Khalji, that the 50%, the person who is growing and showing and doing all the hard work, they are collecting 50% of that. It is known as kharaj. And there was the another tax. It was of cattle tax and the house tax. The cattle tax was known as the chari tax, and the house tax was known as the ghari tax. Okay, because house is also called as in the northern part as the ghar, and the cattle they used to they like charte hain, so there was chari tax and the ghari tax. Remember this. So these three taxes we talked about, kharaj was there, chari tax, ghari tax. It was difficult to control the distant provinces like Bengal from Delhi, and soon after annexing the southern India, the entire region became independent. So it was normal thing because there was a continuous threat from the northwestern part, so they never wanted to leave the Delhi itself. So hence it was quite difficult to control the farthest parts of the Indian subcontinent, such as Bengal, the southern region, the Deccan. It was quite difficult to control all these regions. So understand this. So it is telling about this particular thing. Local chieftain often established their rule in these regions. So whenever there was a lack of communication or there was lack of check on these parts, so the local chiefs, they always in the search of these opportunities, and they used to come on to they used to proclaim themselves as the ruler of those particular areas where the sultanate was not able to reach, right? Chieftains and their fortifications. So Ibn Battuta, a 14th century traveler from Morocco, so remember this, sometimes a straightforward question have been asked that Ibn Battuta belongs to which particular country. So Ibn Battuta used to belong from Morocco. Explained the chieftains sometimes that the fortify themselves in the mountains in rocky, uneven, rugged places as well as in the bamboo groves. So it is talking about all these the people, these chiefs, right, who used to get disconnected from the Delhi Sultanate. The chieftains live in these forests which serve them the ramparts inside which are their cattle and their crops. This is also water for them, and this rainwater which collects there. Hence they cannot be subdued except the powerful armies who entering these forests cut down the bamboos with the specifically prepared instruments. So the people, the Delhi Sultan had to do the hard works, as we earlier seen that there were the dacoits, right, and the other robbers were there also. So whenever they used to whenever they wanted to expel them from these particular area and they want to secure this particular area, so what they used to do, that these people used to live in the forest, so they used to cut all these forests. So if there will be no bamboo or these forested areas, these people might not hide, right? So hence they will not create any problem for the law and order. Remember this. The Mongols under the Genghis Khan, or also called as the Changiz Khan, invaded the Transoxiana in the northeastern Iran somewhere in 1290, and the Delhi Sultan faced their onslaught soon after. So this was the period when the Iltutmish was ruling, and there was a threat that the Changiz Khan can cross the Indus River and can attack this Indian subcontinent. But because the Iltutmish was a quite smart person, because there was a person from the Khwarezm kingdom who came just to take the or came to hide in the court of the Iltutmish. So these all stories we will understand in the subsequent chapter, that how smartly he denied to the Genghis Khan, and Genghis Khan did not attack the Indian subcontinent. Hence, he was Iltutmish was able to save the India from the invasion of Mongols. Right? So Mongol attacked on the Delhi Sultanate in increased during the in the reign of the Alauddin Khilji and the early years of the Muhammad Tughlaq's rule. So we will see that who were the attackers and whether they were defeated by the Delhi Sultanate people or not. We will see all these straight in the next chapters. So now it is there is a talking about the differences between Alauddin Khilji and the Muhammad Tughlaq. Delhi was attacked twice in the 1299 and 1300 and 1302 to 1303. As a defensive measure, Alauddin Khilji had raised a large standing army. And here, first let us understand in the Alauddin part, then we will understand the Tughlaq's part. So Alauddin constructed a new garrison town named Siri for his soldiers. So the map which we had seen in this, it has been shown. But to remember, the thing is that who constructed the Siri? It was done by Alauddin Khilji. So remember this. The soldier had to be fed, and this was done through the produce collected as the tax from the lands between the Ganga and Yamuna, and tax was fixed at 50% of the peasant's yield. So we just have seen that how the Kharaj tax was imposed, and it was 50%. So now it is providing us the detail that what was the purpose of imposing these higher taxes. Okay, the soldiers had to be paid. Alauddin chosen to pay these soldiers' salaries in cash rather than iktas. So important information for exam becomes that whether Alauddin Khilji paid these soldiers in iktas or rather than he paid them in cash. So instead of paying in iktas, because he had control all over the lands, we just have seen. So rather than paying in iktas, what he did, he paid using the cash. Okay, the soldiers would buy their supplies from the merchant in Delhi, and it was thus feared that the merchants would raise their price. To stop this, Alauddin controlled the prices of goods in Delhi. Prices were carefully surveyed by the officers, and merchants who did not sell at prescribed rate were punished. So he controlled all these prices so that there would be no rise in the prices, and all these army persons who are getting paid in cash would be able to buy all these things since the price would be controlled, right? Alauddin administrative measures were quite successful, and chronicles praise his reign for the cheap price and the efficient supplies of the goods in the market, and successfully withstood the threat of Mongol invasion. Because of all these things which Alauddin did, ultimately what he was able to do, that he was not only able to raise the large army but also able to avoid the was able to defeat the Mongols, and was also able to avoid the invasion of the Mongols. Right, now let us talk about the Tughlaq. This Sultan was attacked in the early years of Muhammad bin Tughlaq's reign. The Mongol army was defeated. Tughlaq was confident about the strength of his army and his resources to plan the attack on Transoxiana. So we call it as the Khorasan expedition. He therefore raised a large standing army, but he never attacked. Okay, so he just kept the army standing. So we will understanding that 4 different experiments done by the Tughlaq, Muhammad Tughlaq, but all these 4 experiments were almost failure. So we will understand in the further developments and how these impacted the Indian subcontinent. Rather than constructing a new garrison town, the oldest of the 4 cities of Delhi Kunha, was emptied of its resident, and the soldiers garrisoned there. The residents of the old city were sent to the new capital, Daulatabad, in the south. So Devgiri was renamed as Daulatabad, and Tughlaq had this purpose, that sending the people from Delhi to Devgiri, right? But this was also a failure for him, because he wanted to control from Daulatabad, but he was unsuccessful. Later on, he moved his capital once again to the Delhi, and in all these processes, there was the crunch of the money, and later on he will also introduce the fiat money, the token currency. So this was also be a failure. Okay. Muhammad Tughlaq also paid his soldiers in cash salary, but instead of controlling the price, he used token currency. somewhat like the present day paper currency, but made of cheap metals, not gold and silver. Right? People in the 14th century did not trust these coins because the understanding of the token currency was not there in the Indian subcontinent or the masses. Hence, it was a failure. Right? They were very smart. They saved their gold and silver coins and paid all their taxes on the estate to the state with the token currency. This cheap currency could also be counterfeited easily. So people were they were able to copy this cheap currency, and they were able to pay their taxes using this cheap currency. So Tughlaq's administrative measures were a failure. So we have understood his campaign to the Kashmir was disaster. So we call it as the Karachil expedition. So he then gave up his plans to invade the Transoxiana, and they disbanded the large army. Meanwhile, this administrative measure created a complications and shifted the peoples to Daulatabad was resented. The raise of taxes and the famine in the Ganga Yamuna belt led to the widespread rebellion, and finally the token currency had to be recalled. So overall, these all four experiments which were done by Tughlaq, they were completely failure. Right. So this was the basic difference between the reign of Alauddin Khilji and Mahmud Tughlaq. So in this list, Mahmud Tughlaq's failure, we sometimes forget that the first time in the history. So remember this particular fact becomes important because now it is talking about this, that something happened for the first time. And what happened? For the first time in the history of Sultanate, the Delhi Sultan planned a campaign to capture the Mongol territory. So Khorasan expedition which we just saw. Unlike Alauddin's defensive measure, Muhammad Tughlaq's measures were convened as a part of military offensive against the Mongols. Right? So in the Sultanate in the 15th and 16th century, after the Tughlaqs, the Sayyids and Lodi dynasty ruled from the Delhi and Agra until 1526. Since we understand after this, the Mughal era starts. By then, the Jaunpur, Bengal, Malwa, Gujarat, Rajasthan and the entire southern India had independence because there were no strong ruler remained. Hence, all these territories called themselves as the independent. Right? Established flourishing state and prosper capitals. This was also the period which saw the emergence of new ruling groups like the Afghans and Rajputs. Okay. Now it is talking about the Sher Shah Suri. So it is important, though it is comes after when the Mughals have come. But let us understand about the Sur dynasty as well. So Sher Shah Suri ruled from 1540 to 1545. Started his career as the manager of a small territory of his uncle in Bihar. Eventually challenged and defeated the Mughal Emperor Humayun. He defeated 1530 to 40 and 1555 to 56. Sher Shah captured the Delhi. So this particular timeline which has been shown is ruled by the Humayun. Humayun ruled from 1530 to 1540, then 1555 to 1556. Okay, so we will understand that why there is a gap, all these things, because Humayun had to fled away from India. So we will understand that story as well, and how Sher Shah defeated Humayun in the two battles. Okay, so we will see that. Sher Shah captured the Delhi and established his own dynasty. It is called as the Sur dynasty. Although the Sur dynasty ruled for only 15 years, from 1540 to 1555, it introduced an administration that borrows the element of Alauddin Khilji and made them more efficient. Sher Shah's administration became the model followed by the great Emperor Akbar from 1560 to 1605. This is the reign of Akbar. Okay, when he consolidated the Mughal Empire. So this was the timing provided about the Akbar, that how the Sher Shah Suri was so important and his experiment was so successful that Akbar also copied them. Okay. So now it is talking about the three orders and the peace of God, knights and the crusades. So this is not of that importance for us, but we just need to understand about the medieval part, that how these sultanate emerged and what type of characteristics were developing along with them. Okay, and how northwestern frontier, when it became, our northwestern part became fragile, it gave to the path to the Turkish Empire to get established in the India. So we have understand all these things in the little bit of brief, and but in the later chapters we will understand in the detail. Okay, till then the important all these terms which I have marked, revise them, note down them, okay, and keep memorizing, okay, and keep learning. Till then, bye.